I found Fred in late summer of 2010 in Helmand province, specifically Sangin, Afghanistan. It was an area that was seeing a lot of violence. We were losing a lot of Marines at the time in that area to IEDs and Taliban fire. And in between gunfights and just kind of holding our ground, you know, we'd look over our shoulder and we'd see this funny dog just trotting around the battlefield.
Fred was one of many strays in Afghanistan, but Craig Grossi and his fellow Marines knew this dog was special. While others roamed in packs, Fred bounced around on his own.
The kid in me that always loved dogs kind of took over in my head, and I wasn't a Marine on a battlefield. You know, I was just a guy that really liked dogs, and next thing I knew, I was walking towards him with a piece of jerky, and he wagged his tail, which was the last thing I thought he would do. Before we left, we broke down our little camp, and we moved miles out into the desert away from the Taliban. And then the next morning, we woke up, and we saw this little dust ball coming through the desert in the hot sun, and it was him. And he'd sniffed us out and followed us for miles through the desert. Wow. And found where we had gone to. And I was like, all right, okay, let's start to put together a plan. We've been on a pretty amazing adventure ever since.
Good boy.
Their unique bond is an incredible story on its own, inspiring Craig to follow a new passion, writing his first book, Craig and Fred.
You're so excited. Come on.
But their journey took a new turn when they stopped by the Maine State Prison after a mutual friend suggested they meet then-Warden Randall Liberty.
I was Army. I'm a retired Command Sergeant Major, and I had the honor of serving in Iraq. I was in Fallujah.
Randall Liberty thought Craig might have something to offer their veterans, and after a few visits, Craig began a writing program at the prison, which is the focus of his second book, Second Chances.
One of the things that Craig writes about in his book is how what stood out about you was that you didn't say, let's go meet the inmates. You said, let's go meet these guys, these men.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to you to treat them or to look at them like human beings?
Yeah, for me it's about dignity and treating people with respect. And it's also important to remember these are incarcerated Mainers. They're still Mainers, they're still Americans. Most of them by far will be released back into the community. If you treat them with respect and dignity, they'll have much better outcomes.
It seems like you weren't really sure what was going to happen, but you figured you'd just go in as a veteran, talk with other veterans, and see what happened. And what happened on that first visit?
Yeah, a lot. And I saw myself in a lot of the guys. I saw myself in especially Michael Kidd, who had come home to a town that didn't really have the resources that he needed as a veteran and as somebody, you know, getting out of the military. You know, he just took a couple of wrong turns and it led him down a really dark path. And so that was my first kind of realization, was like, wow, like, you know, if I hadn't been born in this area and had this bubble to kind of come home to, I could have just as easily ended up in a place like Maine State Prison.
During the class, the guys write about their own experiences, their hopes, and their families. Some write songs, others write poetry. Other times they just hang out and chat about their shared experiences in the military. All of it, we learned from Michael Kidd, is therapeutic.
Mail is one of our primary communications. So with writing, I recognized a lot of changes after Craig's writing program in the way that I would correspond with my mother or with my son even, and able to talk about things in my life that I hadn't realized were an issue, or maybe just something that was really meaningful to me that now I can share in a letter. So writing is huge here, and I think a lot of those men didn't realize it either. So when they started writing about traumatic events in their life, they were able to tap into something to find a new avenue to get over that trauma and address it in their lives, you know.
Many of the men in Craig's writing program are also involved in a service dog training program, working with pups that will help injured veterans all over the country.
It's that shared experience that combat veterans have, that we trust each other, and we're in this sort of fellowship and brotherhood immediately.
The dog program, Craig's writing program, anything like that that's an opportunity to get over these walls in the fence and really touch the lives of anybody, whether it's our family or whether it's a veteran that receives these dogs that we'll never meet. It gives us a primary opportunity for us to really feel worthy of something and feel like we still have an opportunity to be something in life, and that this isn't an end game. This is a beginning for a lot of us.
Prison isn't exactly a warm, welcoming place, and many argue it shouldn't be. But through service dog training, university classes, gardening programs in which the inmates grow vegetables for local food pantries, and writing, Many are finding something they lost years ago.
Are these guys finding their purpose?
It is. They are finding their purpose. And we find that people are incarcerated in Maine and nationally for mental health, substance use disorder, trauma, poverty, neglect. And this category of residents in our care fall into that same category. Many of them have post-traumatic stress from their military service. And we have to ask ourselves, when we ask people to go off to war for us, what duty do we have to help them transitioning back? I think the Vet Pod and Craig's work with Fred has been tremendous in helping their recovery.
From day one to now, what have you seen in the progress?
Yeah, it really started with Fred and the fact that he wagged his tail at me all those years ago on that battlefield, because that was the first lesson that he ever really taught me, and he's continued to teach me over the years is it's the idea, I call it stubborn positivity, right? And it's the idea of finding something to be grateful for, finding something to improve on, and wag your tail at, so to speak, when everything around you seems to be encouraging you to do everything else. Fred has literally, kind of through sharing the story, brought me to another kind of challenging environment where people have lots of reasons to not wag their tails and not show their, and to not be grateful. And he's shown me again that there's always a reason to wag your tail, and that people will do it when you give them just a little bit of a chance.